Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Pod Save Chocolate. My name is Clay Gordon. I'm your host today, and I am going to do a geeky deep dive into taking a look at the 2024 Academy of Chocolate Awards because they were just announced last week. And so I got the announcement. I went and looked at the awards and I said, what can I learn about the 2024 Chocolate Awards by looking at the results? And we'll get into that and why I think it's important and how the Academy of Chocolate Awards is the same as and different from other awards programs. And then let's take I'm also going to take a look at another list because there's really, really valuable stuff we can learn, not only from the lists, but about the list makers. Which I think is really, really important as well. So, as with every episode of Pod Save Chocolate, this episode is sponsored by the members of The Chocolate Life. If you're not a member, I encourage you to go over there and become a member. Here is the homepage of The Chocolate Life now. This is live, and you can navigate around it. If you're not a member, you can just click up here on the join button and become a member. They're free, and there are premium subscriptions because I don't do Patreon. Right, I'm not accepting network advertising, so it's the support of members which make these episodes possible. And also, you can go into the live chat on YouTube or in the comments on LinkedIn and Facebook and let me know where in the world you're connecting from. Right. And so just give it let me know where it is. I'll get it up on the screen. And if you have a question or a comment about anything that I'm going to talk about today, you can put it into the comments. I'll get it up on the screen and I will do my best to get it answered. I will definitely get it asked, but I will do my best to get it answered during the course of the episode. And so for this episode, as with every episode of Pod Save Chocolate, I do create a post. And you can go to the post and you can go and find resources to watch this episode. But if there are links to pages, you can go and find the links to the pages. So if I talk about other things which are publicly available, links and things like that, I will put those links on this page after the episode. But with that, I want to dive right into it by taking a look at the results. So the link to this page is on the post. And so here are the 2024 Academy of Chocolate Awards winners, right? Really easy to see. But what you go through here is you go, oh my gosh, there are just a lot of them. I mean, there are a lot of them. How many of them are there? There's no way to know how many awards were given this year. And what you might want to do is you might want to say, show me all of the, let's see, one of the categories is couverture. And okay, so yeah, I can go and say, here are the flavored chocolate, but why is couverture flavored dark chocolate bars a subset of flavored bean to bar chocolate bars? So I think that this filter is a really interesting idea. There is a challenge associated, and it's a really interesting, table idea. But one of the major challenges of finding anything in a list like this is understanding what you can look for. So I would have had to scroll down, notice that couverture was a word, and then scroll back to the top and find out if I could enter couverture. There's also some, really interesting kinds of presentation questions that I look at. And while, they say that consistency is the hobgoblin of small minds, it actually it's not just the consistency. It's just that an unwarranted or an unforced consistency. Consistency when you're looking at data is a good thing because it makes it easier to find stuff. And so we do want to have a logical consistency rather than just asking for consistency for its own sake. And so, for example, why is brand experience, which appears to be at the same level in terms of a hierarchy, right, not all uppercase, which is what it is here. All right, so I don't understand this inconsistency. And there are more things like that we'll get to, right? But I can go through and I can filter this and I can say, oh, I'm interested in knowing, did Good Now Farms, I've spelled it properly, did Good Now Farms win anything? And we can say, oh, there's a chocolate drinks category. And they won something in the chocolate drinks category, a bronze for their Esmeralda's hot cocoa. In the flavored bean to bar chocolate bars, flavored dark chocolate bar, there's a little bit of redundancy here because I know that I'm in flavored chocolate bars. I don't know why I, again, right? It's a foolish consistency. Um, right. And I can see that they won 5 awards there, and then 4 awards in this. So I can see that Good Now Forms won a lot of awards, right? But for me to go and actually find useful information in this list, in the way it's presented, I need to do an enormous amount of work. And so what I do is I grab the first character on the page on the list, grab the last character in the list, and then hope among hope that what I can do is go to let me get obviously I set this up in advance, and then I started working on something and got into the last moment, and I'm going, oh my gosh, what is this? And so what I can do is I can go here, and this is what happens when I paste all of the results into a spreadsheet, right? So, okay, I pasted all the results into a spreadsheet. What do I notice, right? For some reason, brand experience is now upper. So we can see the brand experience is not uppercase as it is with chocolate drinks. So that comes through. It's in the HTML on the page. But I find that I have things that are in 2 columns. So cool, 2 columns makes things easier. But what I find is that there's a lot of different stuff in the same column. So this brand experience header with this, which is a category with a subcategory of brand presentation and corporate gifting, is in the same column as the actual award given with this graphic object here, right? And with a company name of the winner. And so this is just repeated over and over again. And so it's really a challenge to go do anything with this as it is. And so the next step is to go and organize it, right? And so what you do is you say, okay, first thing I'm going to do is I make everything the same size and everything the same font, just to make it easy to read. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start saying, okay, working from the right to the left. So I'm working from the right to the left. Here is the hierarchy. So I have a brand experience category with subcategories of brand presentation, individual chocolate bar wrapper design, and product collection design. Okay, that makes an enormous amount of sense. And so, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down here, and you can see, all right, I've got all these main categories, and, we'll go through what some of these categories are and why they may or may not make sense. But let me give you an idea here. So, I did not do this one because I wanted to show you what it meant. And so what you do is you say, okay, here's the award, and I want to make sure that all the awards are in the same category. So I move it over here. And then I'm going to take this as the subcategory. I'm going to move it over here. And this is the category. I'm just going to copy the text, not the formatting. And I'm going to put that text over here. All right. So, and then I'm going to go and grab the award, and I'm going to move it here. And then milk chocolate is a subcategory. And I have to actually move it down one because what I should have done was put it here, listen, I did this hundreds of times over the last couple of days. And then I moved the silver here, and then I moved the bronze here. So for me to even begin to really start working on this, I need to do this organization, because what I need to do is I need to say all of the things that are alike, I need to put in the same column. And all the things that are different, so I'm going to get rid of the contents here. All the things that are different, I'm going to put something out into, I'm going to put likes in like columns to the best extent that I can. And then what I can do is I can manually go in and delete the lines, right? The blank lines, because there's no way for me to sort this yet. I have no way to sort this, right? So I can't get rid of the blank lines. So having done that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go edit this list, right? And an edited version of this, which enables me to sort it, looks like this, right? And there's a lot of stuff in here, right, that gets added. But you'll see that what it is that I've done is I've added I said, here's a category called bean to bar. And within the category of bean to bar, there's a subcategory called plain dark chocolate bar. And what I've done is I've given every single one of these a category ID. I've said that bean to bar is going to be category 1, and bean to bar dark is going to be category 1. And so I have all these plain dark chocolate bars. And what I've done is, in order to make it easy for me, I've said, plain milk chocolate bars is category B, and then plain white is going to be category 1C. And then category 2 is flavored, right, bars as opposed to plain bars, right? So I now have a way of organizing this. But what it does is it also says, okay, what I can do is I can go and organize this, sort by the category of gold, who won gold, right? And then put them into actual alphabetical order. Because one of the things that you'll see is, if you actually go through this list, is that there's a lot of stuff in here that's not in alphabetical order. I think particularly if we go find Sweets Escalier, right, which you can see here, it's S, right? And Vinci Vinci is above it. QRSTUV, it's out of alphabetical order. And just, why isn't somebody paying attention to little things like this? So having done that, right, what I can do is I can assign a count to every single entry. And what I can do is I can find out there were 532 winners. 532 winners in this year's Academy of Chocolate. I don't know how many entries there were, but I know that they awarded 532 awards. Okay, so now we have an interesting idea. So we have our first clue, right, about what's going on here. Really an interesting number, right? And then what I'm going to go do, right, is I can say, okay, within the plain dark chocolate bar category, right, in the gold, there were 14 golds that were awarded. And there were, how many silvers were awarded this year? 84. So 84 and 14 is 98. So you can get a running count. And then, right, then I go to the bottom of this, and I find that when we get to the bottom of the bronze, we find that there were 118 bronzes, and overall there were 216 awards just in this one category, plain dark chocolate bars, gold, silver, and bronze, right? So I repeat this. And so for plain milk, I go and say how many, right? There were 3 golds, there were 11 silvers, there were 25 bronzes. Overall, there were 39 awards. When we go to the next category, plain white, there were only 6 overall winners in plain white. So we see a lot more dark than milk, a lot more milk than white. There are a couple of reasons why that might be, one of which is there were a lot more entries in them, which would make a lot of sense. And the other one is, that there's a different judging bar that things have to meet in order to win an award. So you'll notice that in the bean to bar white chocolate category, there were no golds, right, awarded, just silvers, and no golds and no bronzes. Everything awarded silver. Not entirely sure. I fixed this issue previously. I'm not, this may be a data issue. I'm not entirely sure what it is. I know that I fixed it someplace else. I don't know why it's showing up. I need to figure it out. But it gives you an idea about what happens when the data is not perfectly organized, is that you find that there are individual challenges within the data itself that you need to go and address. And I know I fixed this. I don't know why it's not on this sheet. But anyway, you get the idea. So what I've got here now is I've got the ability to organize this in a bunch of different ways. And here's where we find stuff like in couverture is capitalized for the flavor. It's not capitalized for the unflavored. I'm not entirely certain why that show. We've got this whole category here of panned and robed filled products. And it really is filled. So flavored ganaches, is this filled? It could be enrobed, right? And so there's this ambiguity here. Why is this category called panned, filled, and robed? And then subheaded flavored ganaches and or inclusions, but I don't know if this is a hand rolled piece. I don't know if it's a shell molded piece. I don't know if it's a slab ganache, which is in. I don't know anything about it, and so the entire category structure here blows my mind. I don't understand what this category structure is, and while I might be able to go and say, "Oh, this looks like it might be an enrobed um, um, piece of um, lemon peel." I can get that, but I have to go all the way out here and look at the name of the ward and figure it out. So I am entirely confused about how this judging category is structured. It makes no sense to me to have this really in a pan enrobed filled products and then flavored ganaches and or inclusions followed by nut based. Oh, there's a caramel pan and filled pan. It's just to my mind. I looked at this and I said, "Oh my gosh, what am I looking at? What am I looking at?" It's really, really crazy, right? And then I go spreads, dark milk, right? And then brand. I move brand experience to the bottom. Maybe it's first B because that's alphabetical, but nothing else is alphabetical, so I don't really understand what's going on. If I look at the order of this, I mean, it says bean to bar. Why is bean to bar brand experience chocolate drinks, right? Flavored chocolate bars, and then I've got flavored chocolate bars. The next category is couverture flavored chocolate bars, and then why isn't it just couverture and then flavored milk? So the structure here makes no sense to me, right? And um, the main point is, again, a foolish consistency is the hobgoblins of small minds. That's the actual quote. It's not the consistency is bad, it's a foolish consistency. I'm not advocating for a foolish consistency. What I'm advocating for is consistency, which makes it possible to go and actually work with the data without having to do 4, 5, or 6 hours of handwork in order to figure out where the problems in the presentation of the results lie. So here we've got this. So what I can do is, now that I know how many companies there are, right? So what I did is I grabbed this column, company, and I can sort on this column. I can sort on this company column, right? Just sort on the company column and grab the uniques out of it, right? What I can do, I don't have to grab. So what I can do is I can organize it and I say, okay, after chocolate won one award. Now I know that the entry fee is £60 per award. And there was if you enter 5, you get a 6th free, which I assumed for the purposes of this calculation is if you entered 5 more, you got the 12th free. All right. So, okay. So there is a perverse incentive to, enter 6 and pay for 5. Right. But what I did is now what I can say is this only talks about the revenue associated with winning entries, not the revenue associated with all entries, because we actually don't know how many entries there were. So we know which companies won awards. We know how many awards were won per company, but we don't know if a company entered more awards that didn't get anything, or if a company entered awards and didn't get anything. So this list is incomplete, right? Very incomplete. But what we can say is, okay, we know that All You Want Cacao and Coffee paid £300 for their winning entries, and Amadei, right? So the first 5 cost 60 each. The 6th one is free, so they paid for a 7th, so they paid for this one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this should be 3. Oh, they did 8. So yeah, so 420 because they paid for 7. Argent Cove, and you can go through here, and it's an insane amount of tedious work, right? It is an insane amount of tedious work to get this done. But what you can do is you can find that we go to the bottom here, right? And what you'll find is that, right, the organizers of the competition earned £27,840, more or less, right, just on the winning entries, right? Not on the total entries, but just on the winning entries. So the average company, right, paid $182. So I can just sum all these up and average them and said, on average, each winning company paid £182. So the average entry, the average number of winners per company was just a hair over 3, right? Many of them paid 60. I didn't do a count of the companies who paid 60. I could do that. One company paid £1,260, right, for winning entries. And again, we don't know if they made other entries which were not winners, right? But that the median entry was 120, right? So, which means that half of the people were 120 or below 120, and half the people were above 120 pounds in terms of entry fees. So, just really, so why are we doing this? We can get an idea, number one, of how much money is involved, which I think is financial transparency is important. But we can also find out, again, one company won 26 awards, right? Was given 26 awards, and this is how much they paid for them. And so one of the things which is clear in the Academy of Chocolate Awards, right, is that not only is there no limit on the number of entries, pay for as many as you want, but there's no limit on the number of entries per category. And we find that if we go back and look at this list. So if we go and look at this list here, which is the flavored dark chocolate bar category, we find that in this one category, we see that Goodnow won 5 awards. We don't know how many they entered, but the more bars you enter in a category, the more likely you are to win an award in a category. So this is ballot box stuffing in a kind of way. And I'm not saying this in a negative way, right? But what I say is, but against Goodnow Farms, I'm not saying this is anything bad. They're saying, here's what the rules are. This is what we're allowed to do. We're going to go do this. What I'm suggesting is that what is the value of the awards to an actual consumer, and what is the value of the awards to the industry, right? If we don't know information about these companies, we don't know how many entrants, per company, how many entries per entrant that there are. It's just, we don't know what the minimum and maximum. When I could go through and say, in this category, the maximum number of awards given, the maximum awards given to one company were X. It helps us understand, what prize inflation looks like, right? And this is one important thing that we can learn. And so, it's like, people may go, "Oh, Clay, this is insane. Why are you doing this?" Yeah, number one is, I find it intellectually challenging to do the work. I find it intellectually stimulating to do the work, because I want to understand, right? And so one of the things I'll do is I'll go and I'll look. So here's the HTML source of the page, and I got to admit that the Academy of Chocolate, whoever published this database, right? The code here is really regular, right? So it's within a table. I know what I know they've given me column names for the table. That's really good, even though they don't actually. These are actually probably more row names than I think they are. They're row names rather than they are column names, and that's a challenge. If we could turn them into columns, it would be a whole lot easier, but that's not the way they are. But it's very, very highly structured. I have a row, and it gives me what the name of the category is, right? And then it gives me the name of the product. So the product name. So this is a subcategory, not a category. Then every single row of all of the winners, for some reason, I'm sorry about that. For some reason, there's an icon for an image, even though the image is not displayed. So they're sending out a lot more data than they need to. So the page is heavier. There's a lot more code in it that needs to get done. So 500 times 100, it's maybe only 5 kilobytes. So it may not actually be all that much. Then I have this award name, but the award name is actually the name of the company that won the award, not the award name. And then we have the description, which is actually the product name, right? So I don't like, there's a mismatch between what the table rows say is in each thing. So there's a mismatch there, but at least it is very, very regular. And so if I were a better coder, what I could do is I could cut the HTML out of this page and then put it into a programming editor or give it a text file, and I could just automatically delete every single occurrence of this phrase and the one, silver and bronze and gold. I mean, it would be relatively easy to do if I were a better coder than I am. Right? There's also another challenge. It's here is I look through here and I look at, so number one, this is not an HTML link. I cannot go to the Hummingbird Chocolate website. Why not? All right. Why are the organizers of the Academy of Chocolate not making it easy for people who are perusing this to go and find go to the website? And if I were even better, it would be like, oh my gosh, I want to go and find the URL of this page. I actually want to go to the shopping cart page, right? There's no reason they can't do this. It could be on the entry form. It could be on the entry form to do this, right? So why aren't they doing it? I have no idea, right? It is possible. They might say, it'll be out of date. Well, okay, it'll be out of date, right? That works. But at least it says, oh my gosh, I'm really, really interested in knowing what this is. I know Susana Cardenas. I have not been to her farm and her factory in Ecuador. I had a chance when I was 2022 and I didn't have time. But, man, forget this. I mean, this is a mantequilla. Well, it's not a mantilla, it's a toquilla. So toquilla is actually a kind of straw which is used to make the traditional hat. We call them Panama hats, but from Ecuador, you might call this hipiapa, which would be another word for this. So there is a language exploration that can be done, completely overlooked in terms of what's going on. But there's also another problem, which is I know that there is a chocolate maker in Canada by the name of Cyrene. And here's a Cyrene by Petre S. or Petrice. I have no idea what this is, but I have no idea of knowing where this is. I mean, I have no idea which one this is. And I really, 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 really want to know which one this is. And so it may sound crazy, but hey, you know that I'm crazy. But so one of the things I did is I went and looked it up. So number one, Coromandel. Okay, so there's no link to the Coromandel chocolate website. And so I'm going, where the heck is Coromandel? I used to live in New Zealand. And so I, looked up Coromandel chocolate, and here's New Zealand. And for anybody who's never been to New Zealand, right, we have the Coromandel Peninsula, which is way up here, right? So this is the Coromandel Peninsula, and the little town where Coromandel chocolate is located is in this town called Whangamata, right? So if you're speaking the Maori language, the WH is like a soft F. So Whangamata becomes Whangamata. Right? And so I wanted to know where that was because I knew it was on the Coromandel Peninsula, but where I've sort of been, I mean, I used to live down in Wellington, but one New Year's Eve, I did a walk around Lake Waikaremoana in the Urewera National Forest. And when I got done, we went to Gisborne, which is up here. And I took a bus from Gisborne to Auckland, right, through Tauranga and a bunch of other places, which are, along the coast here, beautiful. And so sometime in 1976, early 1976 in the New Year's, I actually drove probably within about 50 miles, certainly of Whangamata. I mean, so pretty cool. I would have gone past the bay here on my way to Auckland. So pretty cool. Right. While I was doing this, the furthest north I've ever been on the North Island is this town called Whangarei. So here's Whangarei, it's up here. And so, when I think about New Zealand, I used to live down here. So this is also a geographic exploration. And why aren't we teaching people geography at the same time? I used to live down in Wellington. The furthest north I've been is in Whangarei. If people have thought about 90 Mile Beach, it's up here. There's also a rocket launching pad, which is up here. I mean, there's it's a beautiful country. Go and visit. I mean, I had a fabulous backpacking trip along the coast here. So this is Farewell Spit. This is the Abel Tasman National Park. We started here and ended up walking to Collingwood, which is down here somewhere, which is right here. Just absolutely amazing. Walked the Heafy Track, which is also on the South Island. So this is probably one of the reasons why it took me so long to do the research. Is like, oh man, there are all these side things, right? But it became really interesting to me, which is okay, Coromandel chocolate. Okay, that was fun because I wanted to figure it out. But Chocolatier Palais d'Or, this is French, but Chocolatier Palais d'Or is probably in Japan, right? So we need but why can't I, in the awards results, disambiguate? Why can't we say that Bond fiction, there should be a column over here that says this is what country they're in, right? And even more importantly, when I'm in the bean to bar category, so this is that's drinks category. So let's go into the bean to bar category, right? So this says India, but this says Chuao. Chuao is in Venezuela, right? So why doesn't it say Venezuela with Chuao over here? So what I can do is I can say, show me all the winners from Venezuela. Now, that's an interesting thought. Can I? So Venezuela, right? I need to type it properly. But so I only get Venezuela when it's part of the name. It says Venezuela Chuao. If it only says Chuao, I don't get the names, right? And so this is where, again, consistency becomes really important. It's not a foolish consistency. If I want people to be able to find things and I don't provide them with what are called points of entry, where do we start looking for things, right? It's really, really crazy. It becomes really, really hard to be able to find out unless I know exactly what it is that I'm looking for. And another thing to consider is, so Rila Cacao, if we go take a look at this, right? So there is a space here. There's no space here. No space, no space. There's a space here, right? There are places where there's a comma in between it. So it's comma space, right? There are places where it's in the middle, right, of it. There are places where it's at the end. So the percentage is not in place where I could say, show me all the 70. Well, I suppose what I could do is I could say, show me all the 72%, right? But I only want 72% in the flavor dark chocolate bar category, right? And there's no way to do that here. I have to do an enormous amount of work to add a space in here, right? And to make sure there are no comma spaces. So when I'm searching for things, I can find out what it is that I'm looking for. So I'm guessing Dominicana is the Dominican Republic rather than Dominica. I mean, it's really, really important to do these kinds of things. And so if I look at the page source, it doesn't help me here. But let's go look at the International Chocolate Awards, the 2023 winners, right? So you can go look at the 23 word finals, and there's all this stuff at the top of the page. And here's the 23, and then, oh my gosh, right? So what do we do? All right, so what we do is we go here and we look at the 2023 awards, and here's what we find, right? We find that there's only one column, right? So all of the results are in one column. So really, really challenging to do this, right? So we have major category names are in the same columns as subcategory names, right? And then we have main category, so main category with subcategory. But then what we find is that here is a winner, right? But I would need to go through and find every comma. There's no easy way to parse this out without either using regular expressions in a text editor or really, really sophisticated search and replace in a word processor, which is problematic. But then what I find is like I have a subcategory which is associated with this, a subcategory which is associated with this, a subcategory, and then the number. The number changes for this winner. I actually have 3 different subcategories. And what I'd really like to know is, oh my gosh, right? So if I'm in the 2024 awards, right, did a winner in the International Chocolate Awards in 2024, was it also a winner in the Academy of Chocolate Awards? And so this is one of the reasons why, right, putting what's called regularizing and normalizing. Regularizing is putting everything in the same format, and normalizing is making sure that everything is referred to the same way, right? So if you're going to, in the example that I showed, we can go here. So I can look up, let's show it here because it's going to be easier. I can look up, right, this company, Cyrene, and it is referred to in the database under two names, Cyrene by Petrus and then Cyrene by Petrus chocolate. If these are in fact the same company, I'm guessing that they are. There's no reason why they shouldn't be. Number one, I don't know where in the world they're located, which would help disambiguate, right, what's going on here. But they should be referred to the same way. They should actually have the same name. And that's what I talk about normalizing. Everything should have the same name. There should be one and only one word or phrase which is used to describe the concept. And that one word or phrase is, in fact, right, there's a canonical, what's called a canonical representation. This is what we're going to do, right? And so one of the challenges is the people who run the Academy of Chocolate Awards don't talk to the people who run the International Chocolate Awards, and there is no canonical representation of anything. There are different categories, there are different subcategories, there are different orders. Nobody cares to do any of this, right? Why is that important, right? The reason why it's important is that these people are sitting upon the largest collection of data that exists about craft chocolate makers in terms of who they are, where they are located, right? And the beans that they're using, where the beans come from, right? And there is no way to use the data that they have, right? And know anything about the industry without an insane amount of handwork, right? And that seems to me criminal. So one of the challenges that I face in promoting craft chocolate around the world, right, is that the craft chocolate world, the specialty chocolate world, doesn't have a strong awareness of itself. We don't know how many craft chocolate makers there are. We just don't. We don't know how many, right? We may know within Peru because Minagri or the export promotion agency, Prom Peru, keeps track of, well, it wouldn't be Prom Peru, only on companies that are exporting, but the Ministry of Agriculture, which is one of the supporters of this, the Salón de Cacao y Chocolate in Lima, they might have a database of bean to bar chocolate makers in the country. But does the government of France keep track of this? Maybe, but there's no way to get at it. Does the government in the Dutch government do this? No, none of these companies do it. There's no understanding of who we are, right, as a community. We don't know where the beans come from on a regular basis. We just don't know anything. And what's really, really frustrating to me about the Academy of Chocolate and the International Chocolate Awards is that they are in fact sitting on all this data and they don't do anything with it, right? It is my experience that they are afraid of sharing the data because they don't want to be criticized for what they're doing, right? Listen, if you want to award 500 awards, go ahead and give out 500 awards. I think, but if you want to add a new category every year, if you want to organize the categories differently every year, that's fine. It's your business. Do your business your way, right? But I would like to say that there is a larger contribution that you can make individually and collectively to the world of craft chocolate and promoting it and making it a bigger force for change in the world, right? If what you do is you publish the data or make the data available in a format so that someone can actually, put this into a large database, right? And actually run some numbers, do some analysis on this, right? I am completely and totally paralyzed, right, by the fact that I have to do all of the work that I do to organize this, and I have to do it for every single competition that there is. So the Academy of Chocolate does one a year, that's fine, but the International Chocolate Awards does what, 10, 12, 15 different awards? I mean, it would be really, really wonderful to know, for example, right, how many people who won an award, how many companies who won an award in the Americas round of the International Chocolate Awards also won an award for the same bar, right, at the Worlds And the same thing is true of Asia Pacific, and the same thing is true of each one of them. Can we track? I mean, there's no way to know, given the information we have, like, oh, what is the most awarded origin, right, in the world this year? So if you look at the entire universe of craft chocolate makers, we'd look and we'd say, oh, right, that the most awarded origin was, you know, maybe it's Venezuela, maybe it's Madagascar, maybe it's some other country. But the awards, as they're presented, right, there's no way to understand that, right, without getting, without actually doing an insane amount of work. And I don't want to suggest that the organizers publish information that is truly um, private. But I don't want to know the name of the farm I don't need to know the name of the farm unless, the maker has included it for some reason in their entry, right? But the notion of saying that, chuncho in Peru are, are they're not interchangeable, but if somebody says chuncho, I know it's in Peru, right? Somebody can say Peru, I don't know it's chuncho. So, but it would be really, 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 really helpful if I didn't actually have to go write a program in order to be able to figure this out. Now, ideally, what I've got is I'm going to put all this up in a database, and I'm going to have a lookup, and I'm going to say, if I see chuncho in this field, I know that what I want to do is I want to copy the word chuncho and put it in this field, which is a variety of cocoa that's used. And I know that if it says chuncho, I should check in the origin field to see if it says Peru, right? I would love to have a database table that does that. I want to know, right, every time I look this up, that, oh, this winner's name is in the database of companies, right? And I want to be able to do this for every single year. I want to go back to the first awards that were ever given for each one of these things and say, oh man, here's a company that won one award, and then won two awards, and then won three awards, and all of a sudden it starts winning lots of awards. Right? So this is just, all of this is really, 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 really helpful, really, really, really valuable. And my frustration, and I feel paralyzed, right? That's what I'm doing. My frustration here is that the people who are organizing these festivals are sitting on top of this data, right? And for some reason, I'm not entirely sure why exactly, right? They just don't want to make it available. And I have spoken with, the former senior members of the board of directors of the Academy of Chocolate Awards, and I asked them, can I help you do it? And, I'm interested in doing this. Can you help me? Just like, oh, can you give me it turns out that at least through 2022, all of the data was managed in spreadsheets before it was published. Right. And they said, well, technically the Academy of Chocolate Awards at that time, I don't know what it is, right? We actually don't own the data. It's sitting on a computer, which belongs to someone who's on the board, but we don't have it. It's like, I don't understand what that's all about. All right. And I've asked the organizers of the International Chocolate Awards, can you make this stuff available? And what they're saying is, not without the explicit permission of each one of the people who enter the competition. What is private about, putting the percentage in a separate category on the form, right? If you're going to publish it, you can put it in a separate category, right? And it makes it easy for people to use this stuff. It's easy to people to find this stuff. When you're entering these things, be very careful, about making sure you are consistent in the way you present the data to them, because they're going to, their thing is like, we get so many awards, we just can't spend any time doing any better than this. And the answer is no. Just build a better form to collect the data. Build a better form to collect the data, and it will be available. Again, I don't need to know proprietary information. I don't need to know exactly how much money you guys make. I mean, I just want to know, how many companies entered, right? And, how many entries were there, right? And so what I can say, I don't need to know the names of the companies that didn't win anything. I don't need to know the names of products that were entered that didn't win anything. But what I'd like to know is, oh, you had 2,000 entries and 532 of them right, won awards. So then I know that roughly 25% of people who entered the competition won something, as opposed to, 800 people entered, and 800 people entered. There were 800 entries, and we gave out 375 awards, which means it's closer to 50%. I don't see anything wrong with that. Although, if I do have that data, I can figure out how much money they're making, which I suspect is one reason why they don't want to share the information, right? There are non-disclosure agreements, that I could sign and say, listen, I'd be happy not to disclose some information if you don't want me to, but they don't want to do it. And I can't tell you. Well, perhaps you can get a sense for how frustrated I am at doing this. All right. So this is from Mark and Yuri at Blue Spruce in Kittredge, Colorado. Thanks for putting the effort to analyze the data. I've run into similar problems. I assume that the ICA was unwilling to share their data in any form. So, Mark, here is the challenge. They do share the data. They're just really inconsistent about what they share and how they share it. I mean, they're sharing their data, right? And they're even sharing the score now. This is the score that it won. So I did this. If I can find the file, I'll do a screenshot. I actually pulled this apart one year, and what I did was I actually put it as an element in a spreadsheet, and I could tell you the exact cutoff point, right? Which said, if you got this score and above, you got a gold. If you got this score and below, you got a silver. If you got this score below, you got a bronze. And sometimes the differences between silvers and bronze is like hundredths of a point, right? Which makes you wonder, really? I mean, these differences are coming down to these very, very small differences in math, right? It's like, I understand you need to make some cutoffs, right? You need to make some decisions, but that's a really, really crazy one. And so, here's an interesting one. So, here is part of the HTML for this page. And I showed you the HTML for the Academy. This is really, it's like there's a lot of it, but it's really well organized and you can copy and paste it. But if you look at the 2023, it's like, oh my gosh, it is really, really difficult. And one of the ways to hide data is to obfuscate it, is to make it find. And what you'll do is you'll find that everything in the 2023 awards, right? All of this data in here, including all of the HTML, all of the formatting data, and all of the actual data, right, is in this one line right here, beginning H4, right? Believe it or not, it's like everything is in this one line. So what you can do is you can copy it, as I did, and I can say, oh my gosh, I copied it. And what does it look like? So this is a programmer's text editor. What does that look like? It looks like this, right? So this is security by obscurity, right? You need to really go in here and pay. And so what you can do, as I have done, is you can say, how would I organize this? And I can say, all right, I'm going to go look for every occurrence of the end of the H1 tag, and I'm going to put in 2 carriage returns. So even though the H1 tag might show up in the middle of a paragraph, as it does down here, it's in the middle of something, what I can say is, I can now do this. And then I can say, before every H1 tag, put an extra paragraph. And now I can go for every end H2, I can put a paragraph. And then I can go H2. So I can decompose this, right? But it's an insane amount of work in order to do this. And there's a lot of stuff in here which is like, target. I understand why the target blank here is to force opening this into another tab or window. So I understand why it's there from a programmatic perspective. And programmatically, I can say, find me the text string. Or I can write a regular expression which say, find me everything that matches this string, right? And then just delete it. So I can do that, but it's an insane amount of work. And so I just wanted to get an idea about, what this is, right? So this is taking the same data out of a text editor and putting it into Microsoft Word, right? And so I go through here and I do tools and I look at word count. And so what I find is this is 54 pages of 12-point single-spaced text. 54 pages of text, it's 14,000 words, it's 179,000 characters, not counting the spaces, in 2 paragraphs across 2,300 lines. So this is a way of obfuscating the results. All right, if I go to the Academy of Code Source, it's like, the results are, there's a lot of redundancy here, and so there's a lot of stuff I need to parse through, because every single time I find this URL, it's just like, oh, this is the source of an image which I post. So there's a lot of redundancy here, but at least I can get to it, right? At least I can go, oh, this makes sense. Here's the order of things, and this order is on the page, and all that other kind of stuff. And even though there's an insane amount of redundancy, I can recognize it. Here, it's like, oh my gosh, they're doing everything they possibly can to make it impossible to figure out. And you know what? I've been doing this entire thing, and I haven't been showing you. So here is the Microsoft Word document. 54, how many pages was it? 54 pages, 179,000. All right. So this is one line. Here's the Academy of Source, and it's regular. So Lassa, who is a family member, a beloved family member, and is a cheese expert, among other things. There are several things in here that craft chocolate producers should hear. For example, no links, what the F, what the actual F, and the stats. These things are important. This is my point, Lassa, right? And it's not just why isn't an organization like the Fine Chocolate Industry Association going to these people and saying, for the benefit of the industry, for the people at Chocoa, for the benefit of the industry, make this data available. We will laud you. We will hoist you up on our shoulders. We can go and do. It's like, why not? I'm looking at this and I'm going, this is impenetrable code. Martin, Maricel, Monica, why are you doing this? Why aren't you making it easy for people to go and say, for the benefit of the industry, why don't we go and make this work? I mean, it is insane that we can't. We don't have this information. It's like, really, really ridiculous. Really ridiculous. I get frustrated. Right? I'm not angry. I'm frustrated. Right? I could do the work. So number one, if you're a programmer, so let's actually do a little bit more analysis, because I'm going to run over, but let's do a little bit more analysis of this. And I'm going to go, okay, so we've got this, and I can calculate the revenue. I can get that the revenue from the winners of the Academy of Chocolate for the 2024 awards was around 27,000 pounds, roughly, right? And we can find out what the average spend is, the min, the max, and the median spend. That's useful information, because I think it's possible, if we actually get all the information, to say there is an Optimax solution which says you are more likely to win at least one award, right? If you can enter two or more, and actually the number is three, because I think I did it one year where I had this data, where if you enter three or more awards, you're more likely to win at least one. That was the number I came up with. So there is an Optimax solution to making sure you win at least one award in some category at some level. I can't get at that right now, but that you should be able to know what that number is, right, for doing this. So I also went through and did a bunch of counts. So what I did is said, okay, so what I do know is that 532 awards was won by 171 different companies. And what I did is I said, each company now has the total of the number of awards. So Sweets Escalier, 113, Good Now Farms, 126, right? So I've got for each individual, it's possible to do. It just takes a long, it's tedious work to do. You have to do this. But the minimum number of entries is 1. That makes a lot of sense. The minimum number of winners was per company is 1, right? The max was 26, Good Now Farms. We can find out what that is just by searching on 26. But the median is, in fact, 2, right? So the median number of median number of award winners per company is 2. Yay, which suggests not much, right? But there are things. But what you can also do is that for every company that won one award, right, there were 62 of them. So that about a third of the companies, a little over a third of the companies that entered, right, together, if you entered only one award, collectively you won, right, a little over a third of the awards. If you entered 2 awards, there were 34 companies in that category. They won about 20% of the awards. The outliers here, there were 2 companies that entered that had 13 wins. There were, for 13 wins, there were 2 companies For 9 wins, there were 2 companies. For 8 wins, there were 5 companies. What this also suggests is that what you want to do is, if you want to be pretty much guaranteed to win something, 9 might be where you want to enter. All right, if you talk about, oh, in this particular case, if I were to do the summation of that, we're doing this live, right? So we can say that if I entered my 5 and I got 1 6, 91%, right? 1 6 or more. This is, value. So, and then there's this huge gap, right? Right. Where nobody won 14 awards, nobody won 15 awards, nobody won 16 awards. Again, what we can do is we can calculate what the average cost was per award, 162 pounds 81. So we just, that's useful. But perhaps even more useful is this, right? Which is total of 532 awards, right? So what I did is I took the numbers from the plain bean to bar category, dark milk and white. So there are a total of 216 awards in plain bean to bar dark, 14 golds, 84 silvers, and 118 bronze, right? Counting for 55% of all the awards, right? So so 118 counted for 55%, 84 counted for 39%, 14 counted for 6%. We can count them all up, find out there were 261 in the plain bean to bar category, 261 awards. And we can find that 17 golds, 110, 101 bronzes, 101 silvers, and 143 bronzes. And now we can calculate the percentages, right? But we can then take the flavored dark milk white, and we can get the same kinds of results. We can total them up and say that of the 532 awards, 417 of them were in the bean to bar category, representing 78% of all awards, right? And we can do the same thing for the couverture, right? So we find out that couverture entries accounted for only 2% of all the awards given. And what we find is that there were 0 golds, right? What's that all about, right? Are there different standards for judging couverture than there are? I mean, that's an interesting one. 1 silver in each category. I mean, so collectively they're very different. And there are categories for which there are no silvers, or no golds. I mean, we find it here, right? Right. And so what does that say about the judging process? I mean, I don't know, but given the way the data are presented, there's no way to even understand that this is a question we want to ask, right? That's really, really the important part here. Is there a way for a question we want to ask, right? It's like, and this is the result of probably 5 or 6 hours worth of work, including, all that, geography, looking up the places in New Zealand that I had been to and remembering and wondering if I've ever been. I know I've been to the Coromandel Peninsula. I don't think I've ever been to Pangamata, right? But how close have I been? And it's just like, it was wonderful. I mean, just, one of the reasons why I do this is that, hey, this is a geography lesson. I understand. When I started this out back in 1994, I had no idea where Chihuahua was. I had no idea where Puerto Cabello was, even though they were the names of places on bars of banana chocolate. I had no idea, right? So again, getting back to Lassa, in cheese, producers send their products for judging to get the feedback from dairy scientists and cheese professionals in order to make better products. But they also want to win for marketing, promo, and awareness for their competitors and prestige. It all helps. Everything I'm saying is 100% correct. Lassa, thanks, right? And it's really, really important to know that, for example, feedback at the Academy of Chocolate and the International Chocolate Awards is secondary, right? It's not judges are not required to provide feedback. I mean, at the Northwest Chocolate Festival, at the Chocolate Alliance Awards, if you want feedback, last year, right, you had to pay extra for it. It wasn't a part of it. You didn't get it for free. You had to pay extra for it, which makes no sense. I mean, this is one of the reasons why, I spend time talking about the Craft Chocolate Challenge, which is the primary purpose is feedback. And then secondarily, we're going to present awards, but the awards are, they're only 4 categories, right? Yeah, plain and flavored dark, plain and flavored milk, plain and flavored white, right? Milk, dark, or white with inclusions. Those are the categories, and there's only 1 award in each category: gold, silver, bronze, right? So it makes the entire project really, really manageable for things. And it has a very different purpose because the primary purpose of this is feedback. So I just want to say that, I am not singling out just the Academy of Chocolate here, right? Because they're doing what it is that they're doing. And it's not something that is limited to the Academy of Chocolate. The Northwest Chocolate Festival doesn't do it. The International Chocolate Awards, they don't do it. I mean, even at the Craft Chocolate Challenge, we don't actually publish the final scores, and we're not really all that careful about publishing the data of where the cocoa beans come from. I mean, there's no consistency, but there are only 16 awards. And so the magnitude of finding the answer to that problem is much, much less. And I can do everything I need to do in under an hour, right, in order to get it done just by copying and pasting from the page. So I'm maybe I'll talk to Dustin about giving a little more data. But I just wanted to say that. And so before I run off on doing this, what I want to say is this is not the only challenge. So here is Snack Food and Wholesale Bakery. This is the Candy Industry Magazine, or used to be Candy Industry Magazine, and the global top 100 candy companies. Right, and there is nothing about this data. I mean, there is nothing about this data that is organized. Right, it is just in ridiculous shape. And so if I actually go over here and I look at this, right, and I'm gonna make it bigger so that it's a little easier to see, right. And if I just actually show you the scrape, I'm not going to show you the scrape because it's hand done. There are a whole bunch of columns in here that I put in that I wanted to hide. Format, column, unhide. So there's a whole lot more data in here that I didn't want, is not necessary for this, right? But what I wanted to do is I wanted to say that even big publishers get this wrong, right? So I'm going to go over here and make this a little more visible. I'm just going to drag it over, right? So for example, in 8th and 9th place on the list, and so if I were to go over here and look at 8th and 9th place, what we'll do is that Haribo was 3.3 billion in sales and Pilates was 3.96 billion in sales. They're out of order. Why? Right? Well, I can't answer the question other than somebody who was responsible for checking this list didn't check the list. But no matter what's happened is that what it says to me is this data is not in a form that allows it to be sorted properly. Why not? I mean, it's like, it makes no sense to me that the people who are investing this amount of time to do this work, right, don't have the tools in place to do the checking that they need to get done, right? And so little highlight to myself is that these two companies are out of order, right? And so this is sorted by 2024 U.S. sales, dollars in U.S. sales. And what you find, now you cannot do this on this page, right? And they do not provide you the information. If I go down to the bottom, I'm sorry, well, not to the top, I go to the bottom, they don't tell you what total sales is, right? So you have no idea what this represents. Oh, and by the way, there are two companies at the bottom of the list at 115 million in sales, which is why they're two co-100s, because they're in 100th position. But that's the only place where it's done. There are a number of companies that have the same sales every year, right here. So 94 and 95, why aren't these both co-94 or co-95? I mean, this kind of inconsistency just like drives me crazy, because there are 101 entries on the list, not 100. And they're not consistent in how they go about applying this. And not only that, but hey, Tony's Chocolonely, 150 million in sales in this year. How come Tony's Chocolonely is not on this list? Are they a candy company? They make chocolate bars, which is one of the categories. Why not on the list? There's an American snack food company called J&J Snack Foods. You may know about them because they own like the icy and slushy brands, and they're big into pretzels and things like that. So you may not know the name, but you may know their products. Right? They're 300 and some odd million in sales, and they're not on this list. It's like, why not? They have bakery products that I believe have chocolate chips in them, so they should be on this list, but maybe slushies aren't considered, they're not candy companies, because I don't understand. I mean, is it because they're not international? I don't know. But there is a company that sells a lot of the things that are on this list, right? 320 some odd million last year, that aren't on this list, and I don't understand it. So just even people who put together these lists, you don't know what the criteria are for inclusion on the list. You don't know why they're leaving companies off. I mean, I will probably send an email to somebody at this company and saying, listen, Tony's Chocolonely, did 100 and some odd million in sales. I think 200 million in sales is, roughly what their last year's sales were. How come they're not on this list? Will it be on the list in the future? What's going on? Now that I've done this work, right, I can at least know what questions to ask when I approach them. So the top 10 companies on this list, this is one of the reasons why I wanted to do this. The top 10 companies on this list are responsible for 121 billion in sales across all the product categories that are mentioned. So 10 companies are responsible for 72% of sales on this list, right? That's a lot of concentration of power, right? And by the way, this is just essentially B2C and co-man companies and co-branding companies. This is it, ingredient suppliers. It's for companies that have any retail products. So Barry Callebaut is not on this list, right? So I think that last year's sales were about 6 billion. So if Barry Callebaut were on this list, it would be about position 6 or 7, right? And there are a bunch of other companies. Ecamm is on this list, not entirely sure why. Irka is not on this list. Blommer is not on this list. Guittard is not on this list. They certainly have, I would imagine, more than 100 million in sales a year. See's is on this list, and Guittard sells chocolate to See's. I just now I want to know how this list is organized. What are the criteria for being accepted onto this list? And what does it mean? So, for all of the companies on this list that have sales of more than $1 billion, right, represents 85% of sales. So 1 billion in sales, right, which is the top 23 companies. So the top 10 companies have 72% of sales. The top 23 companies, right, have 85% of sales, right, and are responsible for 184 billion. 3 companies in the top 20, right, are headquartered in Chicago, right, which are responsible for 60 billion in sales. So over 1/3 of all the sales, right, of all the 101 companies on this list, right, Mars, Ferrero, and I believe it is Ferrara, right? All 3 of the, actually not Ferrero, Mars, Mondelez. It's Mondelez, Mars, and Ferrara are all in Chicago. Those 3 companies are responsible for over 1/3 of all the sales on this list. This is why it's important to go and take a look at these lists so that you have an understanding of what it is that they're talking about. It's really, 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 really important, right? If you want to have an understanding of what's going on. And so I actually did this list in a different way. So I organized it by where the headquarters are located, right? So we find that 3 companies are headquartered in Brazil. And if I'm going to highlight this, it had to be 3 companies or more where at least one company had $1 billion in sales. So that was my criteria for being called out. So Brazil has 3 companies. They totaled 1.6 billion, right? The average sales was 546 billion, and the median was 327 billion. So we can look at the next country here is Germany, although one company, Beroni, right, also has headquarters in Belgium. By the way, it's like, take a look at this list, right? So where is Belgium on this list? I mean, we think of Belgium as being the best chocolate in the world, but the number, so you have to go to 33rd on the list before you have one company that's, headquarters is domiciled in Belgium, right? And then if you have to go down to, I think it's like number 82, right? 81 before you find a standalone company, Neuhaus, which is in Belgium, and like 181 million in sales globally. By the way, here's another place: 2 companies with 181 million in sales. So why aren't they co-81? I don't understand, again, why this is the way this is. But we think of Belgium as being this hotshot country, right, where it makes the best chocolate in the world, but there aren't many Belgian companies here on the list. And I want to go and I want to say, it's like, for example, I believe I did it here. What we find is there's some notes here, right, out here, so that this company Pladis, right, global, which is in the UK. I didn't include the UK because there are only two companies, not three. But they Hotel Chocolat in the UK, second largest company on this list, 250 million in sales. Bought my Mars last year for $543 million. So little notes out here. Pladis has a relationship to Yildiz, which is in Turkey, and Godiva is a part of that. We can go into this list and we can find that 100 Flowers, now in Scharfenberger, and American Licorice owns Theo Chocolate and interesting things. But if we look at like the United States, what we do is we find, I didn't actually say, there are 21 companies on the list that are domiciled in the United States. They represent 80 billion, or roughly 40% of all sales of all companies on the list, right? The average sales of all of the companies on this list is 3.4 billion, 3.35 billion, right? But the median is over 430 million, right? This is what you get when you take the data, right, and you put it in a form that can be used, right? You can get an idea of who the players are relatively. Now, if I was really wanted to do this, what I'd do is I'd actually take the UN definition of which countries are in which continents, and then be able to arrange this by continent. So we know that North America, which is Canada, USA, and Mexico, North America dominates, right, compared with Europe, right? But we really get an understanding. So how much is coming from Australasia? We could say how much is coming from South America. There are no companies in the Caribbean that are limited here. We find, one Finnish company. I mean, it's like, so it talks about the distribution of this, which is, I think, really, really valuable, and it's hidden in the data, right? The data are there. The actual data to make this analysis are there, but it's presented in such a way that it literally takes hours and hours and hours and hours to figure it out. And that's why it is. So it is insane that you were trying to organize all this, but hey, someone has to do this. Lassa, yeah, it is insane that I have to do this. And my wish in doing this is that the companies who are involved, the organizers of the festivals, will do a better job of normalizing the data and publishing it. They're the ones who are collecting the data in the first place. And they can organize the way they collect the data, because these days it's all done online, right? So entries are done online. I should be able to figure this stuff. I should be able to put the data into a database or into a spreadsheet and do all this work in normalizing and regularizing. I can do pick lists, right? So, countries, there should be a pick list of countries. There are ways to do this, right? Really, really ways of doing percentages, if applicable, all that kind of stuff can be done, right? And what I want to suggest to them and publishers, right? So I understand from publication perspective. Oh, by the way, just heads up for anybody who needs to worry about it, and I'm doing it at the end of this, there is no such thing as a copyright in a list, right? So there is no copyright registration in the content of this list. Can't do it, right? Law says you can't. It's a list, it's a directory. There is no copyright in this. There is no copyright in this list, right? There is no copyright in this list. It can't be done. So this is the 2024 International Chocolate Awards. There is no copyright in this list. You just can't do it. All right, not possible. The only thing you do is not publish it, right? That's why, right, the Wayback Machine exists. This data is available if you're doing it. So I just, there's no copyright in the list. If I can cut and paste it, if I'm not hacking into a computer, if it's on a page and I can scrape it, whether I'm just copying it or going into the code behind it and grabbing that, there's nothing to prevent me from doing that, right? What I'm suggesting to all of these publishers is that you make everybody's lives more difficult when you do it that way. And specifically when it comes to the organizers of the Northwest Chocolate Festival, right? The Good Food Awards, the International Chocolate Awards, the Academy of Chocolate Awards, do better. do better. It is in everyone's best interest to be able to take this data, put it into a single data store, to be able to normalize it and regularize it to the extent possible, right? Because there's going to be a mismatch in the way the International Chocolate Awards names its categories compared with the way that the Academy of Chocolate names its categories. There is going to be a mismatch. Easy enough to solve. I've done it, right? There is value in the industry having this awareness of itself, right? Even though it doesn't encompass the entire universe of who craft chocolate makers, it's only the self-selected part of the universe that entered one of these awards, right? It provides important data, snapshot data for a particular period of time. So we understand that this is what's happening this year. But if what we can do is we can go back, right, and say, here's what it was in the first year, here's what it was in the second year. I mean, and this is where you're just like, I spoke with one of the organizers at the Northwest Chocolate Festival, or not Chocolate Alliance Awards, and he says, we lost the data for the award winners for 1 year. And it's not on the Wayback Machine. I mean, I went and looked for it, right? So we don't know who the winners are for this particular year. And I'm going, oh my gosh, like, how could you not have that, right? Losing there's value in doing this. We want to know what the trajectory is, right? We had X number of companies entering and winning in 2012. We had Y number of companies entering and winning in 2013. We see a trajectory in Y we first started off in Madagascar and Venezuela and perhaps Ecuador, so Arriba and Porcelana, for example, and now we find that there are other origins, other producing countries that win more often. So I can tell you for the 2018 International Chocolate Awards, European Bean to Bar Awards, right? The country whose beans won the most awards was not an obvious choice. It was Nicaragua. All right. And the reason why it was Nicaragua, because Mikkel Frizz Holm, who mainly uses Nicaraguan beans, won a lot of awards that year. So we entered a lot of bars, won a lot of awards. And so Nicaragua as an origin won more awards because of a single company, right? So you couldn't know that unless you got all this data and you go, oh, wow, this is why that happened. I mean, if you look at the Americas round for the same year, bean to bar. So what is the most awarded producing country? Ecuador. Why? Picari. Picari won more awards, and because Picari won more awards and it uses almost exclusively Ecuadorian beans, that was the most popular producing country in the Americas round for the 2018 International Chocolate Awards. If you look at the Asia Pacific round in 2018, what was the most awarded origin, right? Globally, what was the most awarded, what producing country won the most awards, was awarded the most awards, right, in the Asia Pacific round? Taiwan. Why? Because of one company, Fuwan. Fuwan won more award than any other company, and because they use exclusively their own beans, Taiwan was the most awarded producing country, right? You can't get to that level of understanding that, oh, a single company can just change our perception of things, right? Unless you have the data to play with, unless you can actually get the data and use it and understand it. And that's why I want to suggest to people that specifically the organizers of these awards programs, right? Contact me, let me know, right? And I will do my best to help you understand what data needs to be collected and how it needs to be organized to make it easier, right? To do, even if you're not going to publish it on the web, right? We do want to make it available to people, academic researchers, at the very least, in order to be able to figure this out. I imagine that there got to be some, listen, and by the way, if you're a programmer, right, and you think this is an interesting task and you have some background in SAS or maybe Perls, something specifically related to string handling, or you think that there might be a way to use an AI model in order to be able to fill in the gaps of things. So we could train it to let it know that chuncho comes from Peru. I mean, could we use this as training data for an AI? That would be really, really cool, right? Can we use it to go find out, oh, this is the name of the company. These are the companies that it's likely to be, right? And so we can reduce the amount of time it takes to fill in the gaps. So if you're in school and you're an AI researcher and you're in computer science and you want a thesis that you could build around chocolate, contact me. I would love to be an informal advisor, outside advisor on your thesis. If your thesis advisor would let me do that, to help make this happen, because I think it's hugely important for the industry. I would make available to you all my spreadsheets. I would make available to you all the thing, everything that I've done. And I have worked with somebody to try to semi-automate this. We get about 95% of the work being done, more or less, programmatically, but it can be done, and I know that it can be done. And at this point, we are at the end of the hour. I want to just point out, it's been scrolling for the entire time, that this episode of Pod Save Chocolate, like every episode of Pod Save Chocolate, is sponsored by the members of the Chocolate Life. Here's the homepage of TheChocolateLife.com. You can go there, click on the join button, and you can become a free member, right? Or if you have the resources, I know that there's a lot of financial uncertainty at the moment. But if you have the resources to support the work that I'm doing, go and click on join, become a premium member, and give me a hand. Don't do Patreon, not running advertising, network advertising. I do have a new advertising slot. If you are a festival or a conference and you want to promote it, I'll put it on the homepage of the Chocolate Life. We'll do it there. And for every single post, every single episode of Pod Save Chocolate, there is a post. Now, I want to point out, right, that there is a link to the Academy of Chocolate Awards that I did to. I don't think I may have a link to the International Chocolate Awards pages. There's a link to the candy industry top 20, top 100 global companies. It is Candy Industry Magazine. I mentioned why it's important to do better. If you want to help, please help. But this is a topic that I've been writing about for quite some time. So I did talk about the 2018 International Chocolate Awards, the European Bean to Bar Awards, more analysis on various awards. You can find this here in previous episodes of Pod Save Chocolate, as well as posts. So there is some background data if this is a topic that interests you. Right? So that's what it is that I have to say today. And what I would like to point out, that this coming Friday, which is the 7th of February, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, the 7th of February, the topic is going to be the monthly news in AMA. And then a week from today, I decided to have a lot of fun. So a week from today is episode 99 of Pod Save Chocolate. So not the 100th episode, but the 99th episode. I've decided to just have fun, right? Because as you know, everybody knows, I think if you're working with chocolate and you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong. Right. So what I wanted to do is say, okay, imagine that money was not an issue, right? That the cost of equipment was not an issue, right? I didn't have to worry about investment capital, right? If I were to create a chocolate / confectionery workshop, so I'm making chocolate from cocoa beans and I'm making confectionery, what equipment would I purchase? Right? How would I go spend money, assuming that money was no issue? Now, I'm going to be doing a companion issue. I'm not certain if it's going to be 100, where I'm going to say money is an issue. And so I'm going to, what equipment would I buy? Right? I will do that again. But I want to start off just with this complete fantasy issue for a week from today is money is no object, right? Given everything I know about all the equipment that's out there in the world, right? What would I buy if I were to set up a chocolate, making chocolate from cocoa beans and confectionery workshop from scratch today, right, in 2025? Hey, maybe somebody wants to invest in the project. I don't know, but what would it take? And again, the interest is this may be equipment you've never heard of. That's pretty cool, right? But it may also be that you'll get some ideas for just this is where the limits are. But importantly, I'm not just going to mention equipment. I'm going to mention why this particular equipment is what I'm going to be purchasing. What are the characteristics of this piece of equipment that interest me? And that's the fun for me, right? Because that's where I want to end for this episode of Pod Save Chocolate, as every episode of Pod Save Chocolate, which is if you're working with chocolate and you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong. And even though in this episode, right, I said I am frustrated by the industry's lack of openness and transparency when it comes to publishing the data around these awards, right? I find that personally very, very frustrating. Um, I found that the little insights that I learned, I mean, the things that I learned about this kind of stuff and the little side stories into the geography and language, what is Etokia? Where is Whangamata, on the Coromandel Peninsula, and then revisiting that trip by bus from Gisborne to Auckland and then up to Whangarei. Just it was fun. I enjoyed it. And this is the point. You're putting your hands in something. If you're making chocolate and every day you're smelling it and it makes you happy, and you're making a product that people purchase for themselves and they give to other people and it makes them happy. And fundamentally, I think that if that's where we come from, if we think that our purpose of being here is to maximize well-being and to minimize harm, right? How does chocolate become a vehicle, right, for our journey in this world, and the relationship we have with lots of other people, and hopefully you find that whole thing, that journey, fun and interesting as well. And so until the next time, everybody, have a great time. And remember, if you're working with chocolate and you're not having fun, you might want to consider your life choices. Until the next time, everyone, ciao.